Welcome back to Noise Avocation Podcast. I'm Ryan, here with Jeremy as always.
How's everybody doing out there?
First and foremost, thanks for tuning into the episode. We appreciate it. Happy Monday if you're driving to work or whatever the hell you're doing from across the world, whoever's listening. We'll get into our guest here in a minute, but before we do that, I wish I didn't have to announce this, but unfortunately on Friday, Wayne Kramer of the MC5 passed away. If you're unfamiliar with Wayne Kramer, he was an incredible pioneer of punk rock and roll music in general, political activism and music in general. Like the MC5 were huge, but huge for Detroit, but not huge like worldwide, you know what I mean? Unfortunately, they should have been huge worldwide, but maybe that'll come in time, like after Wayne's passing.
No, it's definitely a band that they got their due after they were already done, and they still haven't gotten their due, so to speak. But,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think they're like
but I will say this
name outside of Michigan, at least.
Based on Wayne dying yesterday, or whatever the time it is, it's in the New York Times. Now, I guarantee you the MC5 was never in the fucking New York Times. And that's kind of the shit that's like, it takes somebody to die to get like that recognition, you know?
Yeah, like people always say you don't get your flowers until you're dead, which, I mean, yeah, but at the same time, like, if you have people who are here, I mean, like, you got people like Keith Richards and stuff who I feel like have gotten their notoriety, but, like,
sure.
Why shouldn't Wayne Kramer have gotten his? Like, clearly from just scouring the internet, in the last couple days, the amount of people from all various ranges of music and, like, magazines and places that have posted about it, he was known. He's done a ton of work he had a charity called Jail Guitar Doors that brought guitars to people in prison, so they had something, to focus on while in prison as sort of an outlet to cope with being in there, because while he was locked away, that was sort of his outlet.
Also, shout out Carl Weathers, who also passed away, a.k.a. Apollo Creed, a.k.a. What's the matter, Dylan? See, I got you pushing too many pencils, that kind of shit. So Carl Weathers went out. That shit sucks, too.
Yeah, same day.
Bad weekend.
It was like, I seen Carl, and then I was like, oh, man, Apollo Creed, like, that's shitty. Like, that sucks. And then I opened my phone later on that day, and I read the Wayne Kramer thing, and I was like, no way, like, that can't be real.
Yeah.
I had to, like, go in, dig around, and look, and I'm like, oh, wow, because, I mean, just being a fan of the MC5 in general and Wayne's solo work, and it's such a huge loss. Like, his contributions will definitely go on, and he has paved the way for so many bands that came after, like, the Stooges, the Clash, the Sex Pistols, any punk band, tons of rock bands. Like, you guys owe a lot to Wayne Kramer. So
yeah, even if you don't know it.
Yeah, even if you don't know it. Like, and if for some reason you're unfamiliar, take the time, go check out the MC5, check out Wayne Kramer's solo work, check out his Jail Guitar Doors charity, which is still live and active. I don't know who's running that or whatever, but
he put a book out a few years ago that I know we both read called The Hard Stuff. If you get a chance, read that. That'll pretty much sum it up, man.
Yeah, I mean, the guy was a rock and roll legend. There's no other way to put that. So huge loss to him, huge loss to Michigan music in general, and my heart goes out to his family and all that stuff, and rest in peace to Wayne. But I wish I didn't have to make that news announcement, but it has to be made. So but moving on from that, we talked with Blast Beats a while back. If you listened to that episode, we interviewed Fiat Productions last week, who was the label that released this band that we have here with us today. You've heard us mention Weald Woe. You heard the track at the beginning of the episode. By the way, if you're interested in the song, it was called My Heart to Fear, off their latest album, For the Good of the Realm. Currently, the record's sold out. I believe all the physical copies of tapes and CDs are sold too, but if you listen to Fiat, she mentioned that they're doing a repress of the record, so stay tuned for that. We'll definitely announce that on our Instagram and stuff as well once we know more about it. a while back we interviewed Obsequiae, which is the only other castle metal band that I'm really aware of. So it was cool to see somebody else have that title of music, and I think the album's great. We're going to get into all that in the episode. So, Jeremy, unless you have anything else, we'll jump into talking with Jeff, and thanks for listening. Jeff, first and foremost, thanks for taking the time to jump on the show. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Anytime.
Shit, we've been talking about Weald Woe a bit lately because we did Fiad last week and Blast Beats not long before that, which was right around when the record, the actual physical record, was coming out.
Right.
So one thing before we get kind of into the background of the band and stuff, I thought it was really cool that this record sold out in like 3 minutes, 2 minutes, if I remember right, when the Blast Beats drop came out. But it originally, like when you guys put out your first tape, it took you a lot longer to sell out than that. To hear that growth was really cool to me.
Yeah. So when we first released For the Good of the Realm with Fia back in like September, the tapes and CDs, if I remember right, sold out, I think in like a day and a half, within 2 days. It was still like, by all means, pretty fast, but
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
certainly not 3 minutes fast for sure. So if you think that's cool, imagine how I felt when
Right.
when Marianne texted me and was like, "Oh yeah, they're all gone," and I was like, "Did your website crash?" And they were like, "No, they sold out." And I was like, 3 minutes? Damn! Like I barely got out of the driveway in time.
Yeah, I was like on the website at about like 9:50 and hitting refresh and everything because I've had to deal with drops that have gone this way before. Like, and I wasn't sure because I caught on to the album a while after it came out. I didn't hear it right away, but then when I seen the
Yeah.
record release, I was like, oh sweet, fucking need to get that, because when we were talking to Blast Beats about it, I was playing it throughout the day and night and etc. So I didn't know where your popularity was really with like your physical media fan base. So I was like, well, to be safe, I better be on there like right at drop.
Right. Yeah, like our stuff has sold really well, which has been really, really cool for us. And I'm very thankful for that. I did not anticipate 3 minutes. I figured that we would move all of the copies. I wasn't too concerned with that, but there was a much higher demand for the album on vinyl than I think that I anticipated. So I'm very, very grateful to Fear Productions and Blast Beats for doing that for us, because it has introduced us to a lot of people who did not know about us otherwise.
I had never
So
heard
it
of
has
you guys
been
until Blast
very
Beats.
helpful. Yeah, so it's been super, super helpful, like from a marketing standpoint, just for the band.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think Tanner from Obsequiae might have posted the picture of the album like when it came out, because when I seen the album itself, the photo, the artwork like rang a bell. Like I had seen it before, but I didn't know exactly what it was. But it definitely like
Yeah,
draws people in.
yeah, Tanner did share it from the Obsequiae page when it dropped, which was, I mean, James Hetfield might as well have shared it. Like that's
Yeah, for
kind of an
sure.
equivalent action for me. Like Tanner's the dude. He's like the king of what we're doing, right? So for him to like acknowledge us and share that on his page was like the highest form of endorsement that I could imagine. So I was really, really moved by that.
Yeah, when we interviewed him, both those guys, Carl and Tanner, were like incredibly intelligent. Like Jeremy and I, like after the episode, were like, damn, like that was like an in-depth interview, and like we got a ton of info out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, both of those guys are highly intelligent, incredible musicians, very kind people. Like I'm grateful to know both of them for sure.
Yeah, I'm like was not aware of this scene at all, and like so I guess we just like got lucky and got to the head of it right away. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah, because that was the only band that I'd heard
yeah,
of
dude,
called Castle Metal.
I don't. Yeah, like this all fucking new to me, dude.
So that was like when I seen that the hype sticker on the record of the Weald Woe album said True Castle Metal, I was like, wow, Obsequiae is the only other band that I've heard like
Say
defined
that.
as Castle
Yeah.
Metal. So I'm like, I definitely got to check this out.
Hmm. Yeah, that was a kind of a fun ploy at the. I guess I like to make fun of black metal stuff a lot because it's such a self-serious genre. from a bunch of dudes who are like the nerdiest, most unserious people. So you always see the people online who are like, oh, that's not true cult, like with the
Yeah.
TRVE. So
Yep.
we were just kind of poking fun at that, being like, oh, this is true castle metal. Like, and it's kind of funny and it just stuck.
That's kind of what I thought it was. Like,
Yeah, it kinda
immediately I
sounds like
thought
a
of
joke
the
anyway.
cult thing. Because I think, didn't you? I got the record in front of me. Yeah, you even used a V in true. That's what it made
Yeah,
me think
yeah.
of. I was like,
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
yeah. How did you decide to like start making music inside of the genre of castle metal? Was it mostly obsequiae like inspiration? Or is it just
In
like
a in
stuff
a
that you're into in general? Because from your Instagram page and stuff, I can tell that you're into a lot of like fantasy type of stuff.
Yeah. So the backstory on Weald Woe is not particularly dense, but I'll give you a quick rundown. So basically, I've been doing music since I was like a freshman in high school in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So up through high school, I played in like a psychobilly band for a while. And then in college, I met up with some other people. And then I started playing more kind of like post rock, instrumental concept record type stuff. And then really in my early 20s, so around 2014, 2015, is when metal really kind of started getting my attention. Like I had been into Metallica and power metal and like new metal and all that stuff through my like musical trajectory from teenagehood and all that stuff. But it was in 2015 when I heard the Obsequiae album, Aria Vernal Tombs, that really I was like, okay, what is this? You know, because I'd always been into Lord of the Rings, medieval kind of stuff had always had a very firm grip on my imagination and my aesthetics. Like I knew that I really liked those things, but didn't know if there was like a market for that kind of outside of like the goofy shit that power metal does with it, you know, with the Conan the Barbarian guys on the album covers and
Yeah,
Yeah,
with
that shit's
loincloths and
fucking
shit. And
hilariously
like Man of
cheesy.
War and
Yeah.
that
yeah,
one
exactly.
Amon Amarth album where they were all dressed up like it was the worst album
Yeah.
cover ever, but it was so
Yeah, I've
cheesy.
I've never I've never really liked that kind of edge of the medieval kind of sword and sorcery bit. That was not my thing. It always felt a little kitschy to me.
Mm,
And but then I heard Aria Vernal Tombs and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like I didn't know that this was a thing, right? Like it grabbed me in such a visceral way that I was immediately taken, and it has been one of my favorite albums ever since. I listen to that album at least once a week, front to back, all the time when I'm driving. Like the way that Tanner works in the acoustic instruments with, you know, the 4 or 5 guitars he's got going on a certain like at any given time is just. I had never heard anything like it. I still don't hear anything like it. Like Obsequiae is its own thing, and I always want it to be its own thing. And because it's Tanner's such a unique individual, I'm fairly confident that it always will be. Obsequiae is the one true Obsequiae, and everybody else is, you know, imitators. Will the real Slim Shady please stand up kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, Obsequiae is it. Like that is like if I could pick one metal band for the rest of the time, I would probably pick Obsequiae. Maybe Bathory, probably Obsequiae, just because it hits all the boxes. It's beautiful, it's heavy, it's fast, it's dark, it's grim, but it's also uplifting and triumphant. Like it's all those things in one, and I didn't know that music could do that for me. Like Mozart used to get close, but Obsequiae hits all those boxes. And so from then on, when I heard that album, I was like, I gotta find some way to do something like that. Like it was very inspirational for me. And then around late 2017 or so, I started playing around with like some power metal stuff with like the formation of my other band by Fire and Sword was kind of me saying like, okay, here's my foray into metal. Like I'm going to try it, see if I can do it. It was kind of successful. So we put a band together, we started playing. And then in 2018, I heard Inexorum for the first time. And that was kind of when I got into like Immortal and Bathory and stuff like that. And like the veil of black metal was kind of lifted for me. Like it had always been kind of oh, those are the church burning dork guys off on the side. most of it sucks. So I never really gave it the time of day. But I heard like Twilight of the Gods and Hammerheart and At the Heart of Winter and like those kind of seminal, really important albums. And I was like, oh no, there's depth to this. There's innovation and creativity. And there's more to it than just like corpse paint, because corpse paint has never been something that I cared about. I'm like, okay, that's fine. It always felt like a way to cover up a lack of, I guess, musical quality, being like, oh, look at how theatrical and serious and spooky this is. And it also like complements how lo-fi everything is. And the lo-fi stuff like never hit for me. Like I didn't like that. I like high quality sounding things for the most part. But like in that summer of 2018 was when I heard At the Heart of Winter, Hammerheart, Lore of the Lakes from Inexorum. And I was like, okay, I have to try something. And so I spent that summer putting together the first Weald Woe EP, Eternal Grave. You don't have to listen to it. It's not very good. I'm not very proud of it, but I keep it on the Bandcamp because I'm like, this was a stepping stone. It's fun to look back and be like, oh, look at how far we've come.
Yeah, fuck that. Be proud, man.
Yeah, I'm not taking it down, but I also don't like share it to people for the most part. So I did that. That got some attention. Immediately had some interest in our local scene here in Boise to play some shows. So I put together a band and we started gigging out, and then I started writing more music. And then it was in 2019 when Obsequious third album, Palms of Sorrowed Kings, came out that I kind of was like, okay, that's the direction I need to go. Because I kind of played with some of the thrashier black metal side stuff. It worked. It didn't like hit for me. I think it just isn't like where my wheelhouse lies creatively. But then I started putting more of my intention into studying medieval music and listening to a lot of Obsequii. And it kind of like, once I figured out, okay, castle metal is kind of the goal, that's what I'm going to shoot for, it became a really nice focus for me. And then we came out with our album, The Fate of Kings and Men, in 2020, which I think was on its way. Like it had some of that more true cult riffage that I hadn't quite gotten away from yet, but it also had some of that experimentation into the castle metal stuff, which I think like some of it, like the song Land of Forgotten Sons, I think is close, or The Fate of Kings and Men at the back end of the album. Like there's some of that in there. I'm still figuring out how to do that. And then once I, unlocked the key to the archives on how to do that, like what are the scales and the modes and the harmonies required and the compositional elements of that, it was kind of off to the races. And then that's how we ended up with For the Good of the Realm.
So when did you start playing guitar? Because you obviously know what you're talking about, and it sounds like you know what you're doing.
I try, or at least I'm a good pretender. I started playing guitar in 2003 when I was 13.
Oh, right on. That's a pretty good, the age that people start fucking wailing on guitars. It's awesome.
Yeah, I started out playing the bass because all my friends played the guitar and none of them played the bass. And they were like, oh, well, that's a good way to make sure you always have somebody to play with because, you don't want to put 5 guitar players together. So I started playing bass. And then I took to that really quickly. And at the time, I kind of felt like I outgrew it, which now in my 30s is incredibly naive because the bass is a very complex instrument when played correctly. But
well, as a kid, yeah, you're like, I want to be Jimi Hendrix, or whatever.
Right, yeah.
It is.
I distinctly remember seeing like a bright yellow Ibanez RG at a pawn shop when I was there with my dad and being like, I want to play that guitar, and definitely not this crappy 4-string Ibanez bass that I had. I still have it actually somewhere, but
I also started on Ibanez bass at one time.
Oh yeah, it was like an Ibanez Geo sound gear something
like
that like
$200 or something.
If they paid that much for it, then I feel bad for them. But
right.
Yeah, that's kind of how I got my start, and then I was real into. God, this was the early 2000s, so it was like a combination of pop punk and like new metal stuff. Like I was real big into Limp Bizkit, and I'm sorry for everybody who's listening that they find that disappointing in me, but really liked Limp Bizkit at the time. Linkin Park was huge. My introduction into Metallica was actually Saint Anger. So it was all
brutal.
All an improvement from there.
That'd be like Metallica, geez, guitar solos, what?
They can really only go up from there.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Yeah, if
actually
I
in
mean, if
that sense, that's a
I
good
always
place
tell
to
people
start.
that if I started with Saint Anger and I liked it, it was only going to get better. Like
Right.
Yeah.
everything was just a vast improvement after
Mm.
that point.
I do remember being a kid and seeing the Saint Anger video on MTV when it came out, and they was like in a prison or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah, that was pretty
I
hard. And
had
they're all
heard
wearing beanies and shit.
Metallica. Yeah, yeah, I had heard Metallica like before that, just because I don't know the area we live in, like Metallica, AC/DC,
Pantera,
Pantera, that stuff is all very
Jackal.
prevalent. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, Jackal, and especially now that they just came here, people are like, "I fucking love Jackal." Like
But
they're all
they
walking
own.
around with
Yeah, and that's
chainsaws.
the only song they know. Anyway,
Yeah, but I had seen and heard Metallica, or not seen them, but seen them on TV, and heard them prior to that. But Saint Anger was like, I just didn't care for it, and most people don't.
Yeah, I didn't have an alternative Metallica experience, so I was like, "This is kind of cool." Considering that at
Right.
most of the time I was listening to like Incubus and Nirvana and Linkin Park and stuff like that. So I was like, "Oh, this goes pretty hard." But like, obviously not having any other point of reference.
Yeah, yeah. If you don't have anything else to go off of, I will say that the snare sound didn't work for them in that album, but I have heard other bands pull that sound off. It's just I don't think it went with what they were trying to do because the snare is what fucks everybody up on that album. I think because it just sounds like they're
Yeah,
bringing like a tin keg or something.
and I mean, you get kind of that a very similar vibe out of a lot of like slam, like that subsection of
Yeah,
death metal where they have that very tight, ringy snare.
yeah,
I don't typically like that. Some bands it works and some bands it doesn't, but usually that's a put off for me. And I don't think that I really cared when I was 13, but I definitely don't listen to Saint Anger now just because I can't imagine a room full of grown ass men sat around and went, "Yep, this is good. Let's put it out." Like it's hard to fathom.
oh my God, there's
fucking
so many albums and records that I wonder, like, what were they thinking?
yeah.
Yeah.
But I know that was like around a weird, period in their career when they were all doing that some kind of monster shit, and they were all like fresh out
Yeah.
of rehab
They're like,
or
let's
something.
try to get on Ozfest.
Yeah. But anyways, screw Metallica. We're here for you. Uh, so when you were making so after the Fate of Kings of Men, like did you immediately start on For the Good of the Realm, or did it kind of, you let the other one simmer for a little bit and then you were like, okay, I'm going to try this and this differently moving forward?
I'm not one who really rests on my laurels too much. Like I tend to release something and then am excited about it for a week or whatever, and then I go, okay, clap my hands and move on to the next thing. So I'm kind of
Right.
always writing. Like I have an incredibly large folder on my hard drive of just like riff ideas and songs that I should work on and stuff like that. So I kind of always have the next thing lined up, ready to go. One of the benefits of also working with By Fire and Sword a lot is that once I'm done with one thing, I can like change channels for a second. So we we put out the Fate of Kings and Men, and then I went and wrote or finished writing and working on the next By Fire and Sword record. So I can kind of jump back and forth, and they're different enough in what I'm attempting to do that it keeps me musically sharp, but I'm not like nose to the grindstone burning myself out on what I'm trying to do. So it's beneficial in that way. But I kind of jumped right into, okay, I have the next batch of stuff ready to go. I have more music. And so we took some time. We did a tour in between there. That was when I solidified the band really, because we were still, it was still just me when we put out the Fate of Kings and Men. And then after that, I solidified the full lineup. We did a tour. There was some other label stuff that kind of fell through in there. But yeah, all like throughout the meantime of all of that, I was working on For the Good of the Realm.
So
It
the
always
first
keeps it
album,
fresh.
did you do all of that yourself then? Like, was that all your instrumentation?
So the Fate of Kings and Men, I played all the guitars and all the bass, and I did all the vocals, and I did all of the synth and like choir programming and stuff.
Uh-huh.
But I had the dude who was playing drums in By Fire and Sword play the drums on that record.
Are you singing in By Fire and Sword too?
No, I just write all the music and
Okay.
play guitar and bass.
I was gonna say because that's like an impressive change in vocals from Weald Woe to By Fire and Sword.
No, that's definitely not me.
Yeah, like I lean more towards the Weald and Woe side of things as far as the vocals
sure.
go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they're
for
both strong flavors.
oh yeah, they're polar opposites, but
Right.
in a way have a lot of similarities too. But sound wise, it's night and day.
Yeah, I'm just speaking vocally.
Yeah. So for the good of the realm, all the different instruments in there, because I've heard like I think there was a song that had a little bit of bagpipes in it somewhere, and like a couple other chimey like mellotron sounding things, and I don't know exactly what's what in there, but what was that all actual instruments or is it programmed or
Those are programmed.
okay?
They're so there's a lute, there's a psaltery, there's some bagpipes, there's various like hand drums in there, but those are all software.
Okay.
It's amazing what you can do now with that stuff, man. Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, they sound so good. Like the quality of plugins just gets better and better every year. If I had access to those instruments, I would have preferred to have them actually performed and recorded, but
Yeah, but it's not
I
like you
live
can
in
just go
not a
grab a
cultural
bagpipe out of nowhere or like a lute
right,
or
right.
anything.
Or yeah, or like what do they call it, like a gothic guitar. Like where the fuck am I gonna find that? I live in
Yeah.
Boise, Idaho.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
You're
you
gonna
can't
be
just like
flying
so-
people in all over the world.
walk through your corner and pick
Yeah.
up a harpsichord and be like, all right, thanks, I'm gonna head back
Meet
home.
me at my
Right.
place.
Learn how to play this thing real quick.
yeah. Yeah. So I spent a lot of money on having really nice plugins so that I can do that kind
That's
of
what's
thing.
up.
Yeah, I was surprised to find out that the drums on Majesties were programmed when we did that. I was like, dude, it sounds so real. And he's all humble about it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't that hard. I'm
Those
like,
are probably
fuck.
Yeah.
some of the best programmed drums I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, the drums and all the Inexorum stuff that Carl and Matt do, that's all programmed too, and they sound so good.
Oh, I didn't know that either. Learned something new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the good of the realm, Lord Mayo was probably like my favorite track on there. And I know it had no vocal in it, but just that instrument is just so catchy. The whole thing, start to finish, I play it all the time, and it like rings in my head constantly. I'm just like playing it out to myself.
That's awesome. That's so that one's a cover. I didn't write that. It's a Celtic folk tune from like it's a folk tune, so who knows how old it is, but
Right.
there's an arrangement for like a flute or like a penny whistle or whatever instrument she's playing that was done in the early mid 90s. I think it was 96 by an artist called Joni Madden. And she released it on an album called, I think, like Songs for the Flute or Songs for the Irish Flute, if I recall. And I heard it one day when I was driving to work, and I was like, God, this slaps. This is so good. And then I needed another track for the good of the realm, and I wanted to do something that was an adaptation of a folk song. So I dug up her version of that song, and then I arranged it for guitar, and it turned out really good. I'm super stoked on that one. A lot of people say that that's their favorite one, and I'm like, hey, that's really awesome. And then also like it also kind of sucks because that's like the one that I didn't
because you
write.
didn't do it.
But yeah, but I mean that's fine. I arranged it and played some of the guitars and stuff, and it turned out really awesome. So it doesn't hurt feelings. It's just so much like that's the one I didn't do.
Yeah, I think it's just because it's so like catchy, and it's one of them earworm type of things where once you hear it,
Yeah.
you're playing it in your head.
Yeah, I'm sure it grabbed you for the same reason it grabbed me.
Yeah,
So.
but every track on the record is good. I mean, there's no like skippable songs or songs that you're like, I like this one less or whatever. But through and through is all good. Like on In Fire and Steel and Flesh, I really like the layered vocals where it has towards the end there's your higher pitched scream is like front and center, and then in the background there's sort of a lower guttural type of scream going on.
Yeah, that's the other guitar player, Brent. He has a really good like death metal growl, and so we wanted to showcase some of that because it makes for a nice juxtaposition to have my kind of shouty scream with his nice low growl. So we decided we were going to work some of that in just because it works cool. Like works cool. It's terrible English. It sounds good and works well. That's what I meant to say.
How did you figure out that you have this scream that you have? Because it's pretty particular. I mean, it's like a higher pitched kind of belting out scream. It's not like the typical like death metal style low vocal, or it fits the music well, I think. Because I think if you put like a corpse grinder vocal over the music, it wouldn't fit right.
Yeah, that's kind of that would turn me off as well.
Yeah, so that's kind of a very personal journey for everybody who like finds their voice more or less, so to speak. Like I played around with a bunch of different things for a lot of years when like I was still trying to figure out what Weald Woe sounded like. So like if you listen to the Fate of Kings and Men, the vocals on that sound way different than they do on For the Good of the Realm. They're way more processed. I was trying to do kind of like a more mid-range, lower thing in a lot of ways, and that just kind of like it didn't feel right to me for this. And so some of the I guess insider secrets on this is I have a strong background in theatrical performance. Like my college degree is in theater, and then I have another one in history. So I really tried to put myself in the mental frame of like somebody who is anguished, I guess would be the best way to describe it. Was like basically every song on this record is some sort of a rumination on death. Like, did I live a good life? Was my life worth anything? Am I living a life worth being proud of? Like, when I die, will I have mattered? Like that kind of thing over and over and over, just in different ways. And so I kind of wanted the vocal performance to match that vibe of like, maybe my life got cut short, or I am in existential crisis all of the time. Like, when you live in a period of time with such an incredibly high mortality rate where, a dog bite or an arrow or getting pneumonia or something, is you don't know if you're going to get through that, right? So
Right.
I wanted to kind of have that experience through the vocals, and I think it works. I think I did it, but it definitely ended up being more of that like high pitched, anguished scream than like a death metal growl for sure. Because that was the intention. Was like, this is so damn stressful. Like it wasn't. Did my life matter?
Yeah.
Was the impetus behind all of that.
I like that when you're listening, like to me, from the small amount of castle metal bands that I've heard, it paints a whole like visual picture in your head when you're listening to it. Cause like I always picture like, with your music, there's like a dude on a mountaintop over like a battlefield that's, ridden with bodies and is like screaming out for, victory or vengeance or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that it gives you those visuals.
Yeah, we focus very heavily on the vibe. Like I want listening to a Weald Woe record to be an experience that is beyond maybe like the surface level experience of listening to music. Like I want you to have that kind of elevated, oh, this makes me think of Lord of the Rings or Gladiator or something like that, where you're like, oh, hey, there's a higher intention behind this than maybe like, I don't know, putting on a Madball record, you know. Not to shit on Madball, I love Madball,
Yeah,
but
I'd beg to differ that statement too, like a lot.
well, for sure. Like I'm not into the hardcore political elements, but I mean, as far as like usually when I listen to Madball, it makes me want to like start punching people and like throwing shit around my room. So kind of maybe a more of a cerebral. I don't even know. I don't know that I'm explaining that right. It's like it's such a particular thing that I'm trying to do that I struggle to articulate it sometimes. But like I want that elevated, maybe kind of existential experience in a way. Maybe retract the Madball statement. Whereas like less of an immediately physical response and more of a, oh wow, like there's a lot happening here. But I mean
Like a
that happens with
cerebral.
all music, right? Like
You're just saying like your shit's coming out. It's like a cerebral like escape more so than like physical. Like you said, that shit makes you want to fucking throw shit. And to me, it makes me fucking feel good and like laugh. It's like does the
Yeah,
opposite
yeah,
thing.
yeah, exactly.
But I can like, throw it on and punch some motherfuckers too.
Hey, whatever you want to do, man. It's all good with me.
So writing this record, do you have like was there any like period of time and inspiration that was gone into the writing? Because I can't read any of the lyrics, so I, only can pick out just bits and pieces here and there that you can fully decipher.
No, not necessarily. It's all meant to be evocative of that period, to give you that kind of romantic era of chivalry and knights and all that kind of stuff. But it's not specific to a time period. It's not a history lesson. It's not
Mm,
anything like that. I'm not telling the tale of Charlemagne or things like that. It's supposed to just be, uh, a glimpse into the life of someone in that period of time without being specific to a place or a region or anything like that. I mean, the cover art kind of has a strong English vibe to it, but
yeah,
that was
that's an actual
particular to the art.
painting, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a painting from 1911 called Stitching the Standard by Edmund Blair Leighton, who was an English painter.
And I would imagine that's pretty much just public domain at this point. Like you didn't have to like reach out to the estate of them and be like, "Hey,
Yeah.
can I use this?"
I'll cut you a check.
No, like when I found it, I was like, oh, I have to use this. I'm going to save it and come back to it. And then when it came time for us to like actually put together the cover art, I did quite a lot of research, to make sure that it was public domain and that I could use it. Just because I didn't need some dead guy's estate snapping back at me with a lawsuit or something, right? Like a lot of the times, a band at our level could probably get away with it without anyone noticing. I mean, that
Right.
kind of shit happens all of the time. So it's very unlikely that we probably would have drawn anyone's attention unless someone specifically ratted us out. But I did a lot of research to make sure that it was public domain so that I would be safe to use it.
Yeah, it would be pretty odd, like you said, pretty odd for somebody to just be going through, like, oh, what's this? Cast Dungeon? Okay. Oh, they stole this painting? Like, I don't see anybody out there fucking doing that.
They're like the
Right.
heir to
And
the family.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
like
they're
that
just
was
like-
my fucking
Yeah, and there's
mother.
like one for like every artist, like just
Yeah.
cruising these. Doubt it.
and using existing works of art is such a prevalent thing in black metal anyways, that
Right.
like, if you're going to call me out, but you're not going to call out fucking Wormwitch or Bathory or any of the other bands that do it, then like that's just you having some sort of beef with me, which
Right,
is
right. Because
goofy.
you're like, what are you gonna get out of my pocket, dude? Go after somebody
Right.
that has. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, because the album artwork for Hammerheart, like
Right.
they didn't make that themselves. I'm pretty
Right.
sure it was an already
No, and
existing
the same thing with Twilight of the Gods and Blood, Fire, Death. Like all those are existing paintings that Corthon was like, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Like we'll use that one.
What about the back of your record? Was that an existing painting too, or is that something else?
No, that's the same dude. That one is called. Let me go grab my copy of the record so I don't misspeak. That one is called The Accolade, I think.
Okay. I don't
Barry Ann
see-
actually picked all of those.
Oh.
So yeah, I think the one on the back is called The Accolade, and then the one that's actually on the record, which was like the A and the B side, is from another painting by the same guy called Godspeed.
Oh yeah. I just now am noticing that they're all different.
Yeah, all works by the same guy,
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, that's dope.
which are very fitting. She made great choices. She has a really good eye for that kind of aesthetics.
So how did you link up with Fied then? Like did you already know her prior to Weald Woe, or was that like a new relationship?
That was a new relationship. So we wrapped on the mixing and mastering process for the Good of the Realm about a year ago, almost exactly. It was about mid-February. And so Brent and I sat down one day at a Starbucks and we just listed out every record label that we could think of who might be interested in us. So we shot big with like Metal Blade, Napalm, Nuclear Blast, Peaceville, Prosthetic, Profound Lore, $20 Spin, Osmos, Hammerheart, Black Lion, True Cult, Dark Descent, like every record label that we could find a mention of online
Right.
who accepted demos. And so, over the course of several months, we submitted demos to, I think it was 50 or 55 different labels. And for the most part, all of them either ignored us or told us no. We did get a reply back from Metal Blade who said, "This is cool, but we can't do it. No, thank you. Hit us again later," which was cool. Um,
Sounds like
and
nothing's
then,
changed over like the last 70 years in music, you know, like
yeah,
Yeah, like
yeah,
they
everybody
don't
says,
accept it till they see
yeah,
that there's numbers behind
it's
it,
like
type of thing.
right.
yeah, exactly. So we did all those submissions, and then it was actually like, and this is like a dumb musician anxiety, self-conscious thing, but like it was starting to have like a pretty big effect on my self-esteem that nobody wanted my stupid record after like, God, it had been like 5 months of us trying. So by the end of June or the early July, I was in a Discord server with some other people talking about how like, man, nobody wants my record. I think it's really good, but like nobody gives me the time of day. And I forget who it was, but someone was like, "Oh, you should try Fear Productions." I had not heard of Fear Productions, so I looked it up and I was like, I don't know, it's kind of cutesy, like a lot of cute little animals and shit all over the place. I don't know if this is going to be my bag, but I emailed our demo to Fear Productions and I wrote a really nice note and was like, "Hey, I'm submitting this for your consideration, blah, 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 blah." And then like 10 days went by and I had no response. So at this point in time, I was just mad at everyone about all of this. So I emailed her back, or I replied to my own email and went, "Okay, so this is clearly a no. I would love to know what I could have done differently. Like what in my approach wasn't good? What could I improve on?" And then she emailed back and she's like, "Oh no, I actually really like it and would love to put it out." She had like just had a baby and like was busy
Yeah.
with stuff. But she wrote me back, "Hey, I love this. I'd like to put it out." And then the rest is history. She put it out in the beginning of September. So there's a pretty quick turnaround on that. And it's been a golden relationship since.
Yeah, from like what I've talked to her, like she said had nothing but good things to say about you, and then same with you to her.
Barry Ann is easily like a top five person in my life. Like she's a very good friend. And I often refer to her as like the queen of the realm. She like, this is her kingdom. We all just live in it. So yeah, she's been incredibly important to the development of Weald Woe as a band, specifically through this record, and like her mentorship and her effort and care that she puts into all of our releases. And she's been so supportive of us. And like the whole FIA network in general has been really receptive to this weird ass cast metal band from Idaho. So I could not thank Barry Ann enough times over the course of 1,000 years if I had the opportunity. So I'm just gonna try to continue to put out really good music that she can sell, and hope that evens out.
Yeah, there's your thank you.
In our interview, man, she seems like a super dope, like just caring, nice, genuine person, you know, and those are hard to find.
She is very much one of the best people, like in general, that I know. Like her heart is too large for her body. She cares so much about so many things, but like specifically just her animal activism. Like talking to her and seeing how much she cares about animals and disenfranchised groups and people who can't defend themselves. It's very touching and often makes me feel bad about myself.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. Like I was thinking that too. Is like, man, I could really be doing a whole lot more. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and she does. She 1,000% puts her money where her mouth is, like
That's what's
all of
up.
the time.
I have a random question. You just reminded me that I wanted to ask this when you said Idaho. What are there other metal bands from Idaho? Because I've never like. I believe you're one of maybe like two people that I've ever talked to from Idaho.
Oh, well, I love that for you. Um, so, yes, there are actually quite a large number of bands, at least in the Boise scene right now.
I figured there had to
Um,
be, but I was like, I couldn't rattle my brain of anybody that I'm like, oh yeah, they're from Idaho.
yeah, so right now, probably the biggest musical export that Boise has would be Magic Sword. Um, if you're familiar with Magic Sword, they're kind of like a EDM electronic group. Like they had a song in the Thor Love and Thunder movie that came out a couple years ago. Like
Oh,
I
okay.
know
they
the
tour quite a
movie.
bit. Yeah, so they're very popular. We have a very prominent hardcore scene, actually. So we have several bands. Ingrown would be the probably the biggest one in that scene right now. Like they just went on tour with like Immolation last year. And I think they just did another tour recently, but like they're some heavy hitters. They play with some pretty big bands. So yeah, Ingrown rocks. We have another one called Witness Chamber, who
Witness
are
Chamber's dope.
just
I've listened to them.
yeah. So those are the homies from Boise. Those guys are awesome. Another group of people who just like put their money where their mouth is. Like that's my favorite thing about the hardcore scene is like those guys care. Like behind all of the macho like get in the pit bullshit that goes on, like they care, and I really respect them for that. So Ingrown and Witness Chamber are big. We have some death metal bands that are kind of popping off. There's one in particular called Texas Ketamine, who just signed to Maggot Stomp.
Okay.
That's
I
a
know. I
dope
know the
fucking
label.
name, dude. I like that name.
Yeah, I know the label.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar with the band though.
yeah, they just signed pretty recently. I think it was in like late October or November. I don't think they have a release out yet, but they did just sign, and they're a big deal around here. They rock. We have some other like stonery psych doom bands. So there's one called Gorot, who are some dear friends of ours who are really cool. Think like, oh, man, like Sleep, if Sleep had faster riffs. It's kind of a blackened doom thing. So a lot of riffs, really sick vocals. So if you're into doom, I would check out Gorot. It's got Chad Remains in it, who used to be a member of a band called Uzula from I think kind of like the earlier 2010s. They were a pretty prominent doom band for a while, but I mean Chad's been around for decades, so I think he knows like everybody everywhere. Trying to think. I mean, obviously we have Built to Spill, who continue to do things all of the time, but as far as like metal in Idaho goes, we have a strong death metal scene, and then we have a strong hardcore scene. As far as black metal goes, there's getting some more, but for a long time it was kind of just us. There's this other band called Possessive, who are kind of like a crust black metal mashup, who are excellent. There's a black metal band called Tempestari that kind of splits time between Boise and I think Minnesota. So it's around. Some of it tends to be more underground, but we've had some more spotlight on our scene lately, which has been really helpful.
Yeah, I figure every state has to have their scene in some capacity or another. I never been to Idaho. Like we're in Michigan, so that's a long
Yeah,
stretch away from,
right.
especially
And
for
Boise,
underground bands where you're like, a lot of times it'll be when they're emerging, they're popular in that state, maybe the surrounding states, but when you get from coast to coast, and you might not have heard it.
yeah, I mean, like Boise has a lot of bands, and we have this weird relationship to like the rest of the Northwest and kind of the West Coast, where we're kind of considered part of the Pacific Northwest. I think most of the Pacific Northwest would say that we aren't. And then we're kind of
They're
west, but
like, we
like
don't
not
want you.
really.
Well, that's kind of,
Yeah,
I guess,
like
how we would be like.
Take your
I
potatoes
would
and
kind of
go.
consider us more East Coast ish, but we're Midwest. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
but I still
and
feel like
Michigan's a very East Coast
right,
attitude.
right.
yeah. And one of the things that's interesting about Boise is that we are, as far as like a music scene goes, we're kind of geographically isolated in a way. We're like the closest big city to us is Salt Lake, and it's 5 hours. Or like Seattle is an 8 hour drive. Portland, Oregon is a 6 hour drive.
How big is
Reno
Boise,
is,
like population wise? Do you know roughly?
I think it's like just over 200,000,
Oh, so it's not that big at all. I mean,
depending on who you ask. Yeah.
Yeah.
well, I mean, for a
Not that
city, you
small.
know what I'm saying? Like, I guess,
For like a proper city, it's not very large.
right.
I think so. We're in an area called the Treasure Valley, which is a handful of cities, and I think it is, oh, man, nearing a million total over like 6 or 7 individual cities. We've had a very large population growth over the last 5 to 7 years
I would
from people
imagine.
from the West Coast moving here.
Yeah.
Like this is
Not
a hot spot to
California.
move to from. Well, it's all the conservative people who don't like Oregon, Washington, or California who move here. And then they move here and buy incredibly large lifted trucks and guns and assume that like that's what we're all about. It's
Yep.
That
Feel
sounds,
that.
kind of a
sounds like
stupid
Northeast
intellectual
Michigan.
It's like you
fallacy.
live here, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got a lot of that going on too.
Oh, fucking rednecks.
Yeah. But my point with that was that it's all like if you're not incredibly driven to get out of the Boise scene and tour and play around, it can be hard to do so because touring is expensive. It's a big drain on your personal relationships and your finances, and getting out to do it is a large commitment. So even doing a weekender in our area is hard because, like I said, Seattle is 8 hours away. Portland's 5. Salt Lake is 5. And if you're trying to go like Seattle, Portland, Salt Lake, you have to skip a day in between Portland and Salt Lake, which is what a lot of bands do. So when bands tour through our area, they'll go Denver, Salt Lake, skip Boise, and then go to Portland or Seattle, like just so they can make that extra drive. We get
That
bypassed all the
sucks.
time for stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that
So I mean, it's been better in the last couple years, but yeah, it's a geographically isolated area that can be hard to get out of, as opposed to like our friends and bands in the East Coast, where it's like, oh, I don't know, Boston to New York is like what, 2 hours, and then from there it's 2 hours to Philly, or I mean, I'm throwing numbers out, but the point is it's much shorter.
right.
Oh, we always have to make a drive too, so we feel that because we're pretty
We're
isolated.
like 3.5, 4, depending on your driving habits, north of Detroit.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, and we don't get like many shows around here just because we don't. I think we're about an hour from the closest interstate in Gaylord.
Yeah.
So, like for a band to come here, they're not. There's no passing through because if you pass through, you're at a lake. Like there's no going anywhere else.
Right.
So
Right.
I mean, it's hard for
Oh,
them
right,
to
I
just make a
laugh 'cause
stop
you're
here.
Totally right. There's a lake.
Yeah, like you're going into fucking Huron. Like there's no. It's not like you're gonna be like, oh, we're going up to Mackinac and doing a show there. Like you're not gonna have the turnout that you're hoping for up there. It's just the people
Yeah.
are not there.
Yeah.
That
Like
being
we
said,
pack
there's
out
scenes
shows in
popping up
Boise. They just
everywhere,
don't
though.
stop here.
Oh yeah, for sure. Just looking through your Instagram, it was late last year. You did kind of a little mini tour in California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, etc. Do you have any
Yeah, we
plans
did. I
to
think it was 9
tour
days.
this year?
Yeah, so it's not currently announced, but we're going up to Canada for I think just over a week to a tour with some of our Canadian friends in a band called Sun Eater.
Oh, I
So
know that
we're
band.
doing like a yeah, so we're doing a tour with them. It's not currently announced, but they reached out to us
It
last
is
year
now.
after the album dropped and said, "Hey, if you ever yeah, now it is." It said, "Hey, if you ever want to come out to Canada, we'll book a tour." And I took them up on it, and they did. So we're doing
Fucking
that
good
at the
for
end of
you, man.
March. Yeah, yeah, it was very kind of them, and I'm super stoked that they thought of us. So we're doing that at the end of March, and then it will be announced, I think, tomorrow. So by the time this episode comes out, we're playing a festival in Washington outside of Seattle called Cascadian Midsummer. And so we're going to do a handful of dates around that as well. But so that'll be at the end of June. And then after that, I think we're just taking the rest of the year to work on the next album. We have a bunch of writing to do, and we're kind of changing up the way that we do the writing process. So we're just going to spend the rest of the year workshopping and writing and getting stuff ready to go for next year.
How are you changing the writing process? You guys like wearing full plates of armor and stuff while you're writing?
No. So previously, I wrote everything. I wrote all the lyrics. I wrote all of the music. I even, to a large degree, kind of wrote the drum parts. And so we're changing that up to be a more collaborative process
Okay.
where we are, like, for instance, I will write half a song or kind of come up with like the bone structure of a song and take it to the guys at the rehearsal space, and then we flush it out as a group, just so that everybody has a not an equal say, but like gets their chance to have creative input, because they deserve that and they want it. And I'm very much open to that process, because it is a lot of responsibility to be like, oh, I write all of the songs.
Right.
I mean, that's been successful, clearly, but the other guys in the band are highly intelligent, incredibly skilled musicians. So I want their input. It just was like, I'm kind of a control freak. I already had a bunch of the music written, so it was just kind of easier to roll that way. And especially with Weald Woe's history of being a solo project, I was kind of hesitant to let go of some of that. But after playing with these guys for several years, I'm like, nope, you guys, I can trust you. We can do this as a group. And so far, the results have been really, really good. I can't obviously share anything with you guys, but
Right.
it rocks. It's going to be different. They have very different backgrounds and styles than I do
Almost.
solely, but it's going to be. I think it's going to be a very welcome breath of fresh air because I certainly don't want to put out For the Good of the Realm again, right? Which is a strong possibility if I'm the person doing all the songwriting. I have
Yeah.
a very unique, specific style, but these
Yeah.
guys have strong backgrounds in other genres. Two of the guys, the other guitar player Brent and the drummer Isaiah, both play in like an experimental death metal band called Aterima. So they have other influences that they bring to the table. Obviously, we're very cognizant of the this isn't a death metal band. We're certainly not experimental in that way. So we kind of are making sure to keep the things in check on that kind of thing. Make
Right.
sure it is a proper castle metal record. But like Brent comes up with melodies that I would never think to come up with just because he has such a different background.
Yeah.
So it'll be really, really cool.
And that's good moving forward because you already have, like you said earlier, you kind of, from the first album to the second album, like unlocked the secret that you were looking for to Castle Metal. So moving forward, like you have that foundation that you were looking for. Now you guys can build as a group together off that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I definitely look forward to hearing more. I was going to ask, but you already answered if you had plans to do another record following this. And I know I didn't mean to ask that as like a give us more already. I just know, like, you said you're always writing, you always got stuff to put out, like that you got your stuff on a hard drive and you're always kind of tinkering around with songs and melodies with guitar, bass, etc.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to keep putting out records till people stop buying them or, something
Yeah.
happens that, means signals the end of the band or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, we are absolutely releasing one next year, probably through FIA again, unless, Metal Blade swoops in and says, hey, we're sorry we rejected you. Please change your mind. And then I have to have a very uncomfortable conversation with Barry Ann. She actually would be incredibly excited for us, but, funny jokes aside.
We just start talking about hockey to Brian Schlegel at Metal Blade, and then that'll be your in. Study up your hockey
Yeah.
facts.
Wait, which team? I mean, I'm a hockey fan, so I could probably talk for a while, but I don't think he likes my team. So
I don't even know what team he actually likes. He's from LA, so whatever fucking
The Kings?
yeah, the Kings
it's
maybe.
probably the Kings or the Ducks, which sinks.
I just
I don't
know
think it's the
from
Ducks,
I just
man.
know
I don't
from
think
like
they
his
were
book,
around.
the Mighty Ducks.
Yeah, like the Mighty Ducks.
Yeah.
Anaheim, they weren't around.
Oh,
fucking-
Anaheim. That's right. I was trying to think of the city.
Yeah, it's the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim.
Yeah, I was thinking the movie.
Oh yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, he's if he's from LA, he's probably a Kings fan.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's your in. Maybe.
Wayne.
I wanted to, before we start getting towards the end of things here, I wanted to, and we talked about this briefly in a post. I want to talk about Hammerheart, Twilight of the Gods, and why you like Hammerheart more. Not that it's not worthy of being the better of the two. I'm not saying that. I'm just curious, what does it for the record for you?
I think it's a good question. I think it's probably one of those things where there's a good bit of nostalgia for it. I found Hammerheart first before I found Twilight of the Gods.
Mm-hmm.
It was an influential record to me in the creation of the band, which gives it a lot of heart points for me, like Hammerheart, haha. But it has a very special place in my heart where it was just a very formative record for me. It spurred one of the best things in my life to ever happen to me, kind of thing. So that gives it a lot of weight in the rubric of why I think it's important. I also think that my favorite songs off of Hammerheart, I just like them better than what I would think would be the best song off of Twilight of the Gods. A couple years ago, we did a compilation, or we contributed to a compilation for one of the dudes from Chornabog. He was going through he had some family drama or something that was happening that needed some medical expenses. And so we contributed a cover of Baptized in Fire and Ice, which is probably one of my favorite Bathory songs. It's my favorite song off of Hammerheart, but It's probably one of my favorite Bathory songs ever. There's just something about that record. I don't know, like it has a very sincere, like authentic energy to it. Like Quorthon's not a good clean vocalist. Like his clean vocals are like kind of messy, and he's can be pitchy,
Yeah,
but
for
it
sure.
it just feels very authentic. Like, and I love that. Like, I love that above, it being pitch perfect and whatever. Like the whole record is like just a hair messy. Like the production's obviously not terrific, but there's something about like it feels like he's talking to me. Like he's singing, and I feel like I'm the only person in the room when I hear it. And I'm finding as I talk about these influences in different interviews and stuff that like certain music has that effect on me where like it makes me feel not noticed, but like I'm the only person listening to it. Like that person has a direct channel to me when I'm listening to it. And I didn't have that same response to Twilight of the Gods. I think Twilight of Gods is probably a top 4 Bathory for me, but there's between like the cover art, the nostalgic factor of Hammerheart, and just the songs on Hammerheart, that one's my favorite and probably always will be. I think it's kind of those like the sum is greater than the parts experiences where it hit me at the right time in my life. And then when I found Twilight of the Gods, I didn't have that same response to it. It's excellent. I listen to it all the time. It just didn't have that same gut punch
Right.
experience for me.
Yeah, I will say Hammerheart definitely wins in the cover art department. And I love the record, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's anything whatsoever wrong with it. I think that the slightly bad production kind of adds to the charm of the album. Like, when I think, like, Vikings and stuff like that, like, I don't think of it being like a clean, pristine type of thing. So I think the dirty production complemented it well.
Yeah, 1000%. Like it feels very like funeral chanty kind of to me, or like what I would imagine like a Viking campfire song would sound like. It has that kind of raw, authentic, kind of brute force energy to it in a way.
Yeah.
That probably didn't make any sense, but it made a lot of sense in my head when I was thinking it.
No, I get what you're
And
saying.
but yeah, it just like it is very authentic feeling to me. And with all of like the Norwegian stuff that's so popular in the last 5 years or so, with all their like top knot braids and perfectly manicured beards, like that kind of like Viking stuff pisses me off. Where like, and then I go listen to Bathory, I'm like, no, that's it. Like that's the vibe.
Yeah, because it's not like they were supposed to be like a beautiful people. Like they were fucking dirty land pirates basically. Like
Yeah,
so
yeah.
how
It
do you
just
feel about
it hits so nice.
how do you feel about Blood Fire Death then? Because I know that's kind of the transitioning from black metal to Viking metal. To me, that's
I love
my favorite
Bloodfire Death.
record of theirs.
Yeah, I love Bloodfire Death, and a lot of times, I mean, depending on what I know about the person, their musical background, Bloodfire Death is the album that I'll send someone first.
Mm-hmm.
If they're like, oh, recommend Bathory to me, I'm like, okay, you should check out Bloodfire Death, because that's kind of like, as far as I'm concerned, Bathory's, Master of Puppets. Like, if you like this, you'll probably like everything else.
Yeah.
I love Bloodfire Death. I think that album rocks. I listen to it not as frequently, but like Pace Till Death. Like I hear Pace Till Death in my head all the time. Like especially when I'm walking around like Costco buying groceries, like Pace Till Death. Like I think about that all the time for no good reason.
My son wore a Bloodfire Death shirt to school for picture day. I can't remember if it was last year. No, it was the year before because he did Cannibal Corpse last year. But his
That rocks.
his mom was like, "Oh, you can't wear that to school. Like it's got naked people on it." And he's like, "They don't even have nipples, Mom. It's fine." And like, I was like, "Well,
He's
fuck
right.
it. He's got you there."
It
Like,
was just the cover shirt with like the horses.
yeah,
and
with
shit.
the horses and the angels and stuff on there.
Yeah, I could see them
Yeah.
getting pissed about that.
They let him wear it. Like,
Did
yeah,
they?
he's got his 6th grade picture with
Nice.
Bathory Bloodfire Death T-shirt.
That rocks. And obviously, not a lot of people pick up on this, but Bloodfire Death was very important to me because my username on all my platforms is Bloodfire Jeff.
Yeah, that
So,
was immediately I noticed that. Like when I found your
Yeah.
Instagram, I was like, "Oh, cool, a pun."
Yeah, 100% a Bathory reference. So I've always considered being named Jeff to be somewhat unfortunate, just because it's like such a goofy ass name for white people that seems to get thrown around a bunch with people like Jeff Dunham or now like Jeffrey Epstein and like all that shit. I'm like, there's a whole bunch of people named Jeff that I don't really want to be associated with.
Yeah.
But it does make for a lot of really good puns. Like you can swap out the word death in any band name and put Jeff in there and it works really cool. So like
Five
finger Jeff punch.
That's
Yeah.
fucking funny that that's what we both went to.
Yeah, like because that's the most obvious one. And then you get like Mega Jeff or just Jeff. I see one I really like is Jeff Cab for Cutie. That's not a metal band, obviously, but that one makes people laugh. A pale horse named Jeff. Jeff rides a pale horse, whatever. Like you could swap it in for just about anything and it works and it's pretty funny.
Imagine if Death was named Jeff. And that was just
here's
the
the
band
album
name they
Scream
went
Bloody
with.
Gore by Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And moving on to Immortal. At the Heart of Winter, when you posted that, like, I love that record. That's my favorite record of theirs altogether. I think that's like easily top 3, one of the best black metal records ever made.
I think, well, and I kind of said this in that video, but like, I don't think that At the Heart of Winter is like a pure black metal record. It has a lot of that kind of thrash influence in it.
Yeah, there's a
But
lot of
for the-
melody to it, but I think it like paints the perfect picture of an icy landscape in the music, like with the sounds that are going around in the background and stuff.
Yeah, it sounds cold. I mean, granted, like all their lyrics are about shit being chilly and frozen and, you know, the the freezing winds of Blashwick or whatever.
Yeah.
So like they do a lot of that in the song title and the lyrics, and like that's a very intentional thing, obviously. But like even just musically, it sounds cold. Like with that guitar tone and the crispness of the drums. Like the drums don't have that like really full kind of acoustic warmth that you get from like a drum kit a lot of the time. It just sounds cold.
It's almost like they recorded it in a freezer or something, because the drums and everything do sound cold.
Yeah. So they absolutely nailed it. So that's like the first album that I send people and they're like, oh, I don't really know anything about Immortal. I'm like, you should listen to At the Heart of Winter. Yeah. If you like that, you can move left or right from there. But I really don't think you should start with like Pure Holocaust or
Immortal's definitely
Damned in Black or whatever.
Digest than a lot.
Well, they're like one of those bands that you can break up into periods. It's like Bathory. Like Bathory has their black metal period, their Viking metal period. They did a thrash metal album, and then they kind of went back to Viking stuff with Nordland.
Yes,
but Immortal, like Diabolical Full Moon Mysticism and Pure Holocaust, and you know that stuff has a different tone than when At the Heart of Winter came out. That was like the transitioning point into Sons of Northern Darkness, and then they kind of went with their sound from there.
Well, and one of the interesting things that not a lot of people know about At the Heart of Winter is that Abath played guitar and bass on that record. Like Demonaz only contributed lyrics. So like even this like musically the production of it feels different because it's a different dude playing the guitar.
Yeah.
So it has just a different vibe.
Tone. That's an interesting fact there.
Yeah, I didn't know that. The guitar tone on it though is so like crispy but cold, chilling sounding at the same time. Like when Lamp of Murmur came out with that record last year, that the name escapes my brain immediately, but that guitar tone in that record reminded me a lot of At the Heart of Winter. Yeah,
it's like it has stood the test of time for a reason. Like it's iconic in just about every way.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So what are some of your favorite black metal records in general, aside from just the ones that we mentioned?
Ooh, black metal. Let me look at my collection just to make sure I don't skip something.
That happens all the time.
Every time.
Yeah, I was like, my brain's gonna pop if I have to just sit here and think about all the black metal stuff that I have.
Sign off and be like, wait, there's more.
Yeah, hold on, I forgot. So yeah, basically, I love all the Bathory stuff. That's pretty clearly evident. I really like Winterfilleth. They have that very kind of like wall of sound thing that it almost has like a shoegazy element to it without being black gaze, because I don't really care for black gaze, but it has that kind of like similar vibe to it where it's just like huge constant sound. So I really like Winterfilleth, and I also really like the acoustic record they did, The Reckoning Dawn, I think it was called. Let's see. I mean, I don't know if you would consider like the first Winter Sun record to be black metal. It has parts, but it's also kind of like a symphonic power at the same time. That one's confusing. It's kind of all over the place.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't know. Like the cultist people wouldn't consider it black metal, but it's definitely has the feel and the sound and the lore to it with everything
yeah,
being
which means
cold.
that I would, because
Yeah,
I tend to do whatever the opposite of the culty people seem to think is cool.
I'd put it
Um,
into like melodic black metal kind of, but it is an amazing album. I love that record.
yeah, yeah, I love that record. I like Worm Witch a lot. I was really big into Heaven That Dwells Within. Oh, Wayfarer.
Yeah,
Can we talk for a
Wayfarer's
second
dope.
about Wayfarer? I
Yeah,
love Wayfarer.
I think
That
they're one of
cowboy
the
shit,
most
like,
unique
oh,
bands to come out like recently.
yeah. And
I
they're
guess
like,
not recently because they've been around for quite a while now. Like, but
yeah,
This
just their
last record though
sound.
blew them the fuck
Yeah,
up
that
too.
American Gothic record was
So good.
fucking amazing.
yeah. And before that, when they had A Romance with Violence, and I got really into them with World's Blood, which I think came out in like 2018.
Yep, that was the
That record
first record
sucks.
that I
Like,
got.
or
Really, you think it
that
sucks? I
record,
like it.
no, no, sorry. No, I was going to say it sucks that was, I feel like that album gets overlooked by A Romance
Oh
with
yeah, yeah.
Violence.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, because I feel
Yeah,
like
because
when they did A Romance with Violence was when they started to kind of get more notoriety.
yeah. And I was like, and I felt they should have had that with World's Blood. Like I listened to that record. That's probably my most listened to Wayfarer record. Like I love World's Blood. I like Romance with Violence and I really liked American Gothic, but World's Blood is just like chef's kiss to me. There's some kind of thing about it that I can't quite narrow down, but just rocks.
Yeah, the album cover
I
is
also
awesome too. Just it being so simple with the the pale dark rider on a horse with
yeah.
like a blurry background. But that was the first record of theirs that I heard, and then I went back to like Old Souls and the one before it. The one before that, Children of the Iron Age, I haven't really dug into a ton, but the four that followed, I've played the shit out of them.
Yeah, I really liked Children of the Iron Age too. I really like, I guess for all the people who are curious, like I am into that kind of early second wave stuff, like Under a Funeral Moon, Blazing Northern Sky. Like I like all that stuff. It just kind of sometimes gets a little samey for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's one of those things where like Dark Throne's discography is so large that it is often not like intimidating, but I just kind of go, ugh. Like there's so many options.
Have you
Um,
listened to any of their like newer stuff that they put out with like the last 4 or 5 records?
I listened to, oh, what did they call it? Not the Goat Lord one, Old Star, and I liked that okay.
Yeah, Old Star was
Um,
cool. Eternal
yeah,
Ales was good. I think Astral Fortress was the one that came out last year. Because
yeah, I haven't heard those two.
Goat Lord was like a repress of an old record, if I remember right.
I think that is right now that you say it. Yeah, and then like the Mayhem stuff's all cool. It doesn't. It's not super my thing. I think De Mysteriis Dom Satanas is a little overhyped. But I understand it's important. It's like being seminal in the scene. Like it's
Right.
an important record. But I'm like, when I listen to it now, I'm like, it's fine. The Emperor, I really like In the Night Side Eclipse. That's probably my favorite Emperor record. There's so many.
I like
um,
Anthems a little bit more than Nightside, just because like it was recorded in like a cathedral and everything, and like the ambiance of the album and how it sounds is it just sounds like you're at like a satanic church type of thing, and like they're taking you
yeah,
on the ride. But both great
yeah. I
records.
mean, yeah. I mean, it's Emperor. Like it's all good.
Yeah,
Even Ishan's solo stuff, it's all good. That guy cannot does not miss as far as I'm concerned.
yeah. I even like their later stuff. Like people didn't like Prometheus and Equilibrium and stuff, but I thought it was all great.
I like that shit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love it.
I mean he gets weird for sure, and I think some people aren't into that, but I really like Summoning a lot for like the obvious Tolkien references and stuff. I used to really like Skeleton Witch. I don't know if they're still around anymore.
As
Or
far as I
if you'd call
know,
them
they
black
are.
metal, they kind of had like that like black thrash thing going on, but I liked them a lot.
Yeah, they were like
Um,
thrash music with black metal vocals, kind of like Devil Master a little bit.
yeah, yeah, very similar. There was this album that came out in the '90s called Return to the Middle Ages. I think it was by God Killer, and I really liked that record until I found out that the guy behind it was also part of a band called Crystal Knocked, apparently. according to Metal Archives, and that kind of ruined that for me because I really liked that record. And obviously, anybody associated with a project called Crystal Knocked deserves a side eye to a degree.
I never heard of either of those.
I don't follow.
you probably-
Enlighten me about this Crystal Knock.
So Crystal Knocked was like that event that happened during the Holocaust where they went around and destroyed all the Jewish businesses and stuff.
Oh, I gotcha.
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So it's just got like a big side eye for me on all that.
I
That
follow.
makes sense.
I like Darkwood's My Betrothed quite a bit. Stormkeep. Speaking of like
That's
the
funny.
Wayfarer guys, Stormkeep.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, we know.
Stormkeep rocks.
Yeah. That album, Tales of Other Time, I think is probably one of the best black metal records to come out in the last decade. Like, just from
I would
start
agree.
to finish, it's absolutely perfect. I still listen to it like it just came out, and I'm waiting for them to come out with another record because it seems like they bounce. You know, like Blood Incantation will come out with something, and then Wayfarer will come out with something, and then they had that little side project that started with an L that I don't know how to pronounce.
Lycotonin or whatever.
Yeah, that one. It was like kind of like
Yeah.
electronic black metal, death metal type of. It was a blend of a lot of different things. But I'm really waiting for Stormkeep to like put out that next installation to where that they got a trilogy going on.
Yeah, I need them to put out a record and then take me on tour with them. That would be awesome. So Isaac, if you're listening, please take me on tour with you. I really like Frost by Enslaved. Enslaved is kind of hit and miss for me. Like a lot of the proggier stuff I really don't care for, but like the earlier actual black metal stuff I'm big into. I like Frost a lot. I like Psy, if you're familiar with Psy from Japan.
I don't think so.
You should check out Psy. What is the name of that album that I really, really like?
Is it just spelled SCY?
SIGH, like you're sighing.
Oh, okay. I was thinking like like scythe.
No, like literally like you're like the physical action. They have an album from 2018. Yeah, they have an album from 2018 called Air to Despair that I love so much.
Okay. I just added it to my Apple Music right now.
Yeah, Psy is
That's
amazing.
An interesting album cover for a black metal band.
But I love that. Like that's such like an aesthetic vibe for me is when people play against that like that type where you're expecting like Frosty Warrior on a mountain or like something like that, and it's like a lady watering flowers. Like that's part of what drew me to like our album cover was that like it plays against that type.
Yeah.
And I didn't want something that was gonna like sit in with like all of the other 1,000 black metal albums that are released every year. I wanted something that kind of stood out.
Right. I like that in Dark Throne's last record that Fenriz just put a picture of him ice skating. I thought that was funny. I thought it was
last
hilarious.
record I dismissed for a while, and then I think Ryan was like, "You should probably check this out," and that shit does sound a lot like their earlier stuff for sure.
It's cool. I like it.
Yeah. That's probably all the black metal stuff I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, that's all good shit, like from the stuff that I know, and now I got a small list of stuff to check out, too, so.
Yeah.
There was one more thing I wanted to talk about, books, because I know you, like Barry mentioned that you review books, I believe, like on Instagram, TikTok. What kind of books do you like to read?
So I spend the most of my time with fantasy and horror. So I try to alternate, so I'll read a fantasy, then I'll read a horror, and go back and forth. But yeah, I do my reviews on TikTok. It's just under Bloodfire Jeff there as well.
Okay.
How's that going? Or is it
TikTok is a freaking enigma, man. Like the algorithm on TikTok.
How to use it. It's weird.
Yeah, like the TikTok algorithm does not seem to function in the way that the other algorithms do. So like the things, sometimes I'll post something and it like kind of blows up, and it was like the most low effort shit that I did. And then sometimes I'll put a lot of effort into something and it totally tanks, and I don't understand, and I might never understand, but I'm very slowly building. Yeah, like I'm slowly building a community, which has been cool, and is probably the better way to actually do that. But it's been cool. I like doing it. It's something to do that isn't related to music, it's like a fun thing for me because everybody always knows me from music. So if I can get in front of some different people through books, I love that. Plus it's a good way for me to turn people onto the books that I really love that they might not know about, but also a good way for me to learn about books that I might not hear about otherwise. Because I mean, just like music, there are so many books released all of the time. It's like impossible to keep up.
Oh
And
yeah.
with the advent of like or the further popularity of like ebooks, self-publishing has become way more prevalent. Like there's so many self-published books out nowadays, and a lot of them are really bad, but some of them are really good. So that has also created like this weird dichotomy of like, this looks self-published, I'm probably not going to read that. But every once in a while you catch a really good one that just needs an editor. So, but it's fun. It's like something to do that doesn't involve music, which I need a break from every now and then.
Right. What are you reading right now? I mean, not right this minute, but if you're reading a book at the,
Yeah.
this point in time.
Yeah. Right now I'm reading a book called The Girl in the Tower by Catherine Arden. It's part of a series called the Winter Night trilogy. It's kind of a play on like Russian folk tales from the late 19th century. It takes place in kind of a late 1800s Moscow, but there's like frost demons and these demons that live in your house called domovoi who like shine your shoes and clean your dishes and stuff like that. So it's got kind of like a cult vibe mixed up with like Russian imperial history. So that's really fun. I like that one a lot. It's kind of a little stiff. The gal who writes it is a very good writer, so she uses like some words and has a way of like, maybe stiff wasn't the right word. It has kind of an elevated language to it. She clearly knows what she's doing, so it's very enjoyable to read. But sometimes it's not the most immediately accessible thing, and that's kind of a thing with Russian
like,
literature.
You read a sentence and you're like, I gotta look this word up, because I've had to do that 100 times in books.
Sometimes, yeah. And then I'm also reading House of Leaves currently. I do a monthly book club like with my sister, so we alternate picking books, and she picked House of Leaves for this month. So I'm also reading that.
Right on. Jeremy and I both read quite a bit, but it's mostly music type of stuff.
Autobiographies.
Oh, sure.
Like
I've read a handful.
I'm reading The Art of Darkness right now, which is like the history of goth.
Yeah, that shit's
cool.
tight.
Yeah, Jeremy already read it. What are you reading right now?
Me?
Yeah.
A straight edge book it's like by the same dude that did the New York Hardcore one, Tony Ripman or whatever.
Oh, okay.
That, and then that's pretty much all I'm reading right now. But it's kind of like, it's one of those books that you can read and almost like Please Kill Me.
Oh, like
you can
kind of
just, you're just like,
oh,
fucking Civ decided blah, blah, blah.
Which I like those sometimes, because those are a good book to like have on the back burner while you're like burning through a main one.
I just have a lot of shit going on at the moment.
Right.
So that's why I'm reading that.
Yeah, Art of Darkness is huge, so it's going to take me a little bit to finish through that. I'm like a quarter of the way through it at the moment.
Which I did. I picked that up too after you're like, dude, I'm burning through it, and I'm like,
reading it again.
I'll just put it back because I know I'll fucking tear into it, you know?
So, anyways, Jeff, I got one more question for you before we wrap things up. We always ask this to people on the episodes, if you've listened to any of the other episodes. What is something that you listen to that people would not expect you to listen to?
Oh, easy. I listen to a lot of synthwave music, so that kind of like 80s retro wave stuff that's real popular right now. There's some bands like The Midnight, Dream Kid, Nina, Prism, stuff like that. I'm a sucker for that like 80s neon nostalgia stuff. I mean, I wasn't born until 90, so I was never around for any of this, but I love it, man. Like that Blade Runner, Terminator,
Fuck yeah, dude.
Die Hard stuff. Like I eat that shit up with a spoon. So I listen to a lot of synthwave, and then I also listen to a lot of this 80s music from Japan called city pop.
There we go.
Which juicy. That's a very kind of cutesy thing. So think like an 80s Japanese version of like kind of a neo funk. It's a mix of like funk music with kind of a lot of that synthwave vibe to it. Man, I could send you some really good stuff if you're curious. But it has like very
Instagram, so send it away.
Yeah, like very bouncy, lighthearted. So much of it is so catchy. It's crazy. Yeah, kind of funk, kind of pop, kind of synth music. That was like a staple of the Japan scene in the 80s. And I don't even remember how I got turned on to this. Like, I don't remember what weird Reddit thread I went down where I found uh, this city pop stuff. But again, it's something I love, and I find more of it every day. It's got that like that super super kitschy, like crappy album covers that were so popular. Like it'll just be like a dude standing on the beach, or like a guy with a cigarette by his car. Like I'll send you some stuff. It's wild. But Maria Takeuchi is my favorite city pop artist right now. She has a song called Plastic Love, that is one of my favorite songs of all time. So if anyone's curious, check out Plastic Love by
Plastic
Maria
Love.
Takeuchi. Yep.
I'm adding it right now so I don't forget. But yeah, definitely send me some stuff. I'm always open to checking stuff
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. So I listen to a ton of that. I listen to a lot of classical, but that's probably not a surprise. But yeah, definitely that synthwave city pop stuff is my most of the time. That's probably what I'm listening to if it's not metal.
Awesome. Well, before we sign off, do you have anything that you want to add or social media tags that you want to plug or anything like that? I'll have all your stuff in the episode description. So for
Oh no,
people
then
that are
I think
quick
that's
to
good.
go.
Yeah. The other thing I appreciate you guys having me on, spreading the word about Castle Metal. I really appreciate that very much. And then I will always encourage people to be kind to animals and listen to Castle Metal.
Little pun on the Fiat Productions shirt.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, man, we were happy to do the episode. We were looking forward to talking with you, and we thank you for jumping on and taking the time to talk with us. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, it's real informative. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate your guys' time. I had a good time.
Cool. Well, I will be in touch with you online, and thanks again, man. You enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Yeah, you too, guys. Take care.
Peace.